Struggling waitress Elena Carter never expected to collide, literally, with billionaire Damian Lancaster. But one accident, a shattered bicycle, and a debt she can't afford lead to an unexpected job offer. Working as his assistant, she's thrust into a world of power, luxury, and undeniable attraction. Just as she starts to believe their connection might be real, Damian's father announces his engagement to another woman. Was she just a pawn in a game of wealth and influence? How will Damian defy his world to fight for the one thing money can't buy? Love? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Elena Carter wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and glanced at the clock on the diner wall. It was already 3:45 p.m. and her shift was supposed to end 15 minutes ago. She still had to pick up her younger sister Mia from after-school care by 4:30, or they'd charge her extra. Money she definitely didn't have. "Order up for table 7. Hank, the cook, called out, sliding 2 plates of burgers and fries onto the counter. "Coming." Elena grabbed the plates and hurried to deliver them to an impatient couple in the corner booth. She forced a smile. "Enjoy your meal." The woman barely looked up from her phone, but the man nodded in acknowledgement. Elena returned to the counter, where Doris, the manager, was tallying receipts. "Doris, I really need to clock out. Mia's waiting and I'm already late," Elena said, untying her apron. Doris frowned, her reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose. Linda called in sick again. "We're short-staffed as it is." "Please," Elena pleaded. "I promised I'd be there on time today." Doris sighed. "Fine, but I need you here early tomorrow, 6 a.m. sharp." "Thank you. I'll be here, I promise." Elena quickly hung up her apron, grabbed her worn backpack from the small locker room, and rushed out the back door. Outside, the late September air felt cool against her skin. Her old blue bicycle leaned against the brick wall where she'd left it that morning. Elena checked her watch again, 3:52 p.m. If she pedaled fast, she might just make it. She jumped on the bike and sped out of the alley onto Main Street, weaving through afternoon traffic. Her mind raced with the evening schedule. Pick up Mia, make dinner, help with homework, then head to her night job cleaning offices downtown. She'd be lucky to get 5 hours of sleep before starting it all again tomorrow. Elena turned the corner, sharply, her eyes fixed on the traffic light ahead that was about to change. That's when it happened. A sleek black car pulled out of a parking space directly in her path. Elena swerved, brakes screeching, but it was too late. Her front wheel collided with the car's rear bumper with a sickening crunch of metal and plastic. The impact sent her flying over the handlebars, landing hard on the pavement. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the pain hit, a sharp sting in her palms and knees where they had scraped the asphalt. "What the hell?" A deep, angry voice cut through her daze. Elena looked up to see a tall man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit standing over her. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his face, which might have been handsome if not contorted with anger, was now flushed with rage. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" he demanded, gesturing to the rear of his car where a noticeable dent marred the otherwise flawless surface. Elena struggled to her feet, wincing at the pain in her knee. "I'm sorry. I didn't see you pulling out." "Obviously," he snapped, pulling out his phone. "That's a custom Bentley Continental GT. Do you have any idea how much that bumper costs to replace?" Elena's stomach dropped as she took in the luxury car. A Bentley. She'd probably make more money winning the lottery than affording to fix this man's car. I don't, she admitted, feeling her face grow hot with embarrassment and frustration. "But I'll pay for it," the man scoffed. "With what?" "That apron in your bag tells me you're a waitress. This repair will cost more than you make in months." His words stung, but Elena straightened her back and met his gaze directly. "I said I'll pay for it. I'll figure something out." Something flickered in the man's eyes, surprise perhaps, at her direct response. He studied her for a moment, taking in her simple white t-shirt, jeans with a small tear at the knee from before the accident, and the determined set of her jaw. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone slightly less harsh. "Elena. Elena Carter." He nodded once. "Damian Lancaster. I assume you have insurance?" Elena felt her cheeks burn. "For the bike, no. Personal liability, yes, but there's a high deductible. Damien ran a hand through his hair, clearly exasperated. Perfect. A small crowd had gathered around them, and Elena noticed people taking videos with their phones. Just what she needed to become the next viral sensation. Broke waitress destroys rich man's car. "Look, I need to go," she said urgently, checking her watch again. 4:10 p.m. "My sister." "You're not going anywhere until we settle this," Damien interrupted, gesturing to his car. "You can't just crash into someone and walk away." "I'm not walking away," Elena said firmly. "I'm taking responsibility. Here." She pulled out her wallet and retrieved her ID and a crumpled business card. "My driver's license and contact information. You can get an estimate for the repairs and contact me. I'll pay you back, even if it takes time." Damien looked momentarily stunned by her straightforwardness. He took the card, glancing at the information. "You work 2 jobs?" "Yes. And I'm about to be late for picking up my sister from school, which will cost me extra money I don't have," Elena explained, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. Damien hesitated, then stepped back. "Fine, go, but I will be contacting you about this." "I know you will." Elena quickly gathered her damaged bicycle. The front wheel was bent beyond repair. Great, another expense she couldn't afford. As she began to walk away, pushing her broken bike, Damien called after her. "How will you get to your sister without your bike?" Elena didn't turn around. "I'll run," and she did, leaving her mangled bicycle propped against a nearby lamppost. She had no time to worry about it now. Mia came first. Damien Lancaster watched the young woman jog, away, her ponytail swinging with each step. He couldn't remember the last time someone had stood up to him so directly, certainly not someone who had just caused thousands of dollars in damage to his car. Most people either cowered in fear or tried to charm their way out of trouble when confronted with his wealth and authority. Elena Carter had done neither. She'd looked him straight in the eye, acknowledged her mistake, and promised to make it right, knowing full well it would be nearly impossible for her to do so. "Sir, do you want to file a police report?" asked. The valet from the restaurant Damien had just left hovering nearby. "No," Damien replied, surprising himself. "That won't be necessary." He slipped Elena's information into his pocket and got back into his car. The dent was noticeable, but hardly affected the vehicle's performance. He could have it fixed tomorrow. As he drove toward his penthouse apartment in the wealthier part of town, he found himself thinking about the waitress. There had been something in her eyes, a mixture of pride and determination that was uncommon in his world of yes-men and social climbers. By the time he pulled into his private parking garage, Damien had made a decision. He picked up his phone and called his assistant. "James, I need you to look into someone for me. Elena Carter." Elena arrived at Oakwood Elementary School at 4:35 p.m., out of breath and with blood still seeping from the scrapes on her knees. "You're late again, Miss Carter," said Mrs. Peterson, the after-school program coordinator, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "That's an additional $20 for the extended care fee." "I know, I'm sorry," Elena panted, reaching for her wallet. $20 meant they'd be eating ramen noodles for the next few days. She handed over the cash, trying not to think about her dwindling bank account. Mia was sitting alone at a table, drawing in her notebook. At 10 years old, she was already showing artistic talent that Elena encouraged whenever possible. Spotting her sister, Mia's face lit up, then quickly turned to concern. "What happened to your knees?" she asked, gathering her things. "Just a little accident on my bike." "Nothing serious," Elena assured her with a smile. "How was school today?" "Good. I got an A on my science project. Mrs. Winters said my solar system model was the best in class." "That's amazing, Mia." Elena gave her a hug, genuinely proud. "Let's celebrate. How about ice cream before dinner?" Mia's eyes widened. "Really, but isn't that breaking the rules?" Elena laughed. "Sometimes rules are meant to be broken. Just don't tell anyone, okay?" As they walked toward the bus stop, Elena pushed the thought of the damaged Bentley to the back of her mind. She'd deal with that problem tomorrow. Tonight was for celebrating Mia's achievement, even if it meant spending a few extra dollars they didn't have. The next morning came too quickly. Elena dragged herself out of bed at 4:30 a.m., her muscles aching from yesterday's fall. The small apartment was quiet as she moved around the kitchen, careful not to wake Mia, who wouldn't need to get up for another 2 hours. She made coffee and a simple breakfast of toast, checking her phone for messages. There were none from unknown numbers. Damien Lancaster hadn't contacted her yet. Elena left a note for Mia with instructions for getting ready for school, then headed out into the still dark morning. Without her bicycle, the walk to Joe's diner took 25 minutes, eating into the precious little sleep she'd managed to get after returning from her cleaning job at midnight. By the time she arrived, Doris was already unlocking the front door. "You look terrible," Doris commented, eyeing Elena's tired face and the bandages on her knees. "Thanks," Elena replied dryly. "Had a bike accident yesterday. Lost my transportation." Doris's expression softened slightly. "Sorry to hear that. You still planning to work both jobs?" "Don't have much choice," Elena said, tying on her apron. "Bills don't pay themselves." The morning rush kept Elena busy, serving coffee and breakfast to factory workers and early-rising office employees. By 10 a.m., the crowd had thinned, and she was refilling salt shakers when the bell above the door chimed. Elena looked up and froze. Damien Lancaster stood in the entrance, looking even more imposing in daylight. Today he wore a navy suit that probably cost more than her rent. His eyes scanned the diner until they landed on her. For a brief moment, Elena considered hiding in the kitchen, but her pride wouldn't allow it. She straightened her shoulders and approached him. "Mr. Lancaster, I didn't expect to see you here." Hint of a smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Ms. Carter, I thought we should discuss the matter of my car in person." Doris appeared beside Elena, her eyes darting between her waitress and the obviously wealthy man. "Is there a problem?" "No," Elena answered quickly. "This gentleman and I have some personal business to discuss. Can I take my break now?" Doris nodded, clearly curious, but unwilling to pry in front of a potential big tipper. Elena led Damien to a booth in the corner, away from the few remaining customers. "Would you like some coffee?" she offered. "Black, please," he replied, unbuttoning his suit jacket as he sat down. Elena returned with 2 cups of coffee and slid into the seat across from him. "So how much is this going to cost me?" Damien took a sip of his coffee before answering. "I had my mechanic look at it this morning. The estimate for repairs is $8,400. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. That was more than 3 months of her combined salary from both jobs. "I see," she managed to say, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. "However," Damien continued, studying her reaction, "I've been thinking about our arrangement." "What arrangement? I hit your car. I pay for the damages. That's not an arrangement. That's responsibility." "Admirable," he commented, "but practically impossible given your financial situation." Elena stiffened. "You don't know anything about my financial situation." "I know enough," Damien replied calmly. "Single guardian to your younger sister. 2 jobs, living in an apartment, on Westview Street, barely making ends meet." Elena's eyes narrowed. "You investigated me. What gives you the right—" "I make it a point to know who I'm dealing with," he interrupted, "especially when they owe me $8,400. Elena gripped her coffee, cup tightly, fighting back angry tears. "Fine. So now you know I can't pay you all at once. I can give you $200 a month. It'll take years, but you'll get your money." Damien leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "I have a different proposal. Work for me." Elena blinked in surprise. "Excuse me. I need a personal assistant at my home office. My last one quit unexpectedly. The position pays $25 an hour, 20 hours a week. You can work evenings after your day job. Within 3 months, you'll have paid off the debt." Elena stared at him, suspicious. "Why would you offer me a job? You don't know anything about my qualifications." "I know you're responsible, punctual, and straightforward. Rare qualities these days. The rest can be learned." He slid a business card across the table. "Think about it. The alternative is sending you to collections, which I'd rather avoid." Elena picked up the card, feeling as though she were making a deal with the devil. "Lancaster Enterprises," it read, "with an address in the city's financial district. I'll need to check that this works with my other job and childcare for Mia," she said cautiously. Of course, let me know by tomorrow. Damien stood up, leaving, his coffee half finished. He placed a $20 bill on the table. For the coffee. Elena watched him walk out, his tall figure commanding attention from everyone in the diner. When he was gone, Doris rushed over. Who was that? And why was he talking to you? Elena sighed, tucking the business card into her pocket. That, Doris, might be either my salvation or my downfall. I'm not sure which yet. Back in his office, Damien found himself unable to focus on the quarterly reports waiting for his review. Instead, his mind kept returning to Elena Carter. James, his executive assistant, entered with a stack of contracts requiring signatures. Did you make contact with Ms. Carter? James asked, arranging the documents on Damien's desk. Yes, Damien replied, signing the first contract without reading it, something he never did. I offered her the weekend assistant position. James raised an eyebrow. May I ask why? The agency sent over several qualified candidates. Damien paused, pen hovering over the next document. Why indeed? The damage to his car was insignificant to someone of his wealth. He could have written it off without a second thought. Yet something about Elena had gotten under his skin. Her pride, her directness, her refusal to be intimidated by him. She owes me a debt, Damien said finally. This allows her to pay it off with dignity. Very generous of you, James remarked, his tone carefully neutral. It's not generosity, it's practicality. Damien returned to signing the contracts. She needs money. I need an assistant who won't quit at the first sign of pressure. James nodded, though his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Will you be attending the Donovan Charity Gala this weekend? Ms. Winters has called 3 times to confirm. Damien suppressed a grimace. Victoria Winters, daughter of his largest investor, had been pursuing him relentlessly since his divorce 2 years ago. She was beautiful, cultured, and from the right social circle, exactly the kind of woman his board of directors hoped he would marry. She was also calculating, cold, and utterly predictable. Tell her I'll be there, he said, knowing it was expected of him. But make it clear, I'm not her escort for the evening. After James left, Damien walked to the window of his corner office, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, Elena Carter was probably agonizing over his offer, weighing pride against practicality. He found himself hoping she would accept. Not just because it would settle their debt, but because he wanted to know more about the waitress who dared to stand up to Damien Lancaster. That night, after putting Mia to bed, Elena sat at her small kitchen table, Damien's business card in hand. She had called her evening job and asked about reducing her hours, explaining the situation. Her supervisor had been surprisingly understanding, allowing her to cut back to weekends only for the next 3 months. Now she just had to decide if working for Damien Lancaster was worth the higher pay rate and worth having to see that arrogant face regularly. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Have you considered my offer? She stared at the message, wondering how he'd gotten her cell number. Then she remembered her contact information from yesterday. Of course, Elena typed a reply. Still thinking about it. His response came almost immediately. Don't think too long. Offer expires at midnight. She felt a flare of irritation at his pushiness. Who did he think he was, setting deadlines like that? But then again, he held all the cards. He could easily take her to court for the damages, garnish her wages, make her life even more difficult than it already was. With a deep breath, Elena made her decision. She typed, I'll take the job. When do I start? The reply came within seconds. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. My address will be texted to you. Dress professionally. Elena put down her phone, feeling as though she'd just signed a pact with someone dangerous. Not physically dangerous, perhaps, but dangerous to her peace of mind. There was something about Damien Lancaster that unsettled her, an intensity in his eyes when he looked at her that suggested he saw more than she wanted to reveal. What have I gotten myself into? She murmured to the empty kitchen. Little did Elena know Damien Lancaster was asking himself the very same question. Elena stood outside the imposing glass high-rise, clutching her purse tightly. The address Damien had texted her led to one of the most exclusive residential buildings in the city. She checked her outfit one more time. A simple black pencil skirt and white blouse she'd bought at a thrift store for job interviews. It was the most professional thing she owned. Taking a deep breath, she walked through the revolving doors into a lobby that gleamed with marble and gold accents. A security guard eyed her suspiciously from behind a sleek desk. "Can I help you?" "Ma'am?" he asked, his tone suggesting she had wandered into the wrong building. "I'm here to see Damien Lancaster. I'm his new assistant." The words felt strange coming out of her mouth. The guard's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your name?" "Elena Carter." He checked his computer screen, then nodded. "Mr. Lancaster is expecting you. Penthouse floor. The elevator on the right requires a keycard, which I'll provide for today only." He handed her a slim black card. "Mr. Lancaster will need to arrange permanent access if you'll be returning." "Thank you." Elena took the card and walked to the elevator, feeling the guard's eyes on her back. The elevator was lined with mirrors, giving Elena an unwelcome opportunity to scrutinize herself from every angle. Her hair, pulled back in a neat bun, looked professional enough, but her shoes were scuffed at the heels, and her blouse had a barely noticeable stain near the bottom that she'd tried to cover with her purse. Next to the polished luxury of this building, she felt painfully out of place. The elevator doors opened directly into a spacious foyer. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, already twinkling with early evening lights. The space was immaculately decorated in shades of grey, black and white, minimalist, expensive and impersonal. "You're 3 minutes early." Damien's voice came from her right. Elena turned to see him emerging from what appeared to be a home office, his suit jacket removed and tie loosened. Even in this more casual state, he exuded authority. "I believe in punctuality," she replied, straightening her shoulders. A hint of approval flickered across his face. "So do I." "Come in. I'll show you where you'll be working." He led her through the penthouse, which was even larger than it initially appeared. The main living area opened onto a balcony with a view that probably cost more than her entire lifetime earnings. Beyond that was a sleek kitchen that looked barely used, and down a hallway, several closed doors that Elena assumed led to bedrooms. They entered his home office, a large room with built-in bookshelves, a massive desk, and more stunning views of the city. A smaller desk had been set up in the corner, equipped with a computer and phone. "That will be your workspace," Damien said, gesturing to the smaller desk. "Your primary responsibilities will be managing my personal correspondence, organizing my weekend schedule, and handling various tasks that don't fall under my business assistant's purview." Elena nodded, taking it all in. "What kind of tasks?" "Arranging dinner reservations, responding to social invitations, coordinating with household staff, that sort of thing." He moved to his own desk and picked up a folder. "Here's a breakdown of your duties and my expectations." Elena took the folder and glanced through it. The job seemed straightforward enough. Essentially, she'd be managing the personal life of a man too busy to do it himself. "Any questions?" Damien asked, watching her closely. "Just one. How does this arrangement work in terms of the debt? Will you be deducting it from my pay, or should I be keeping track separately?" Damien sat on the edge of his desk. "Your hourly rate is $25. Of that, $15 will go directly to you, and $10 will go toward the debt. At 20 hours per week, you'll clear the ore. Had $400 in exactly 14 weeks. Elena did the quick math in her head. That meant she'd take home $300 per week before taxes, still better than what she made at her cleaning job for the same hours. "That seems fair," she said, closing the folder. "Good, let's get started then." Damien moved to his computer. "First, I need you to respond to several event invitations. I've forwarded them to your work email, which you can access from your computer. Accept the business-related ones and decline the purely social ones." Elena sat at her desk and logged in with the credentials provided in the folder. "How do I know which is which?" "Use your judgment," he replied without looking up. "That's what I'm paying you for." Elena bit back a retort and focused on the task. There were dozens of emails, ranging from charity galas to product launches to what appeared to be personal dinner invitations from women with names like Bunny and Kitty. After sorting through them for a while, Elena spoke up. "There's an Invitation here from Victoria Winters for the Children's Hospital benefit this Saturday. Business or social? Damien's typing paused. Both. Accept with my regrets that I'll be attending alone. Elena raised an eyebrow but said nothing as she composed the response. Over the next hour, she worked through the emails while Damien focused on his own tasks. Occasionally, he would ask for updates or clarify a response, but otherwise they worked in companionable silence. At 8:30 p.m., Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Patel, her elderly neighbor who was watching Mia. Everything fine. Mia finished homework and went to bed on time. Elena felt a wave of relief, followed quickly by a pang of guilt. This was the third night this week she hadn't been home to tuck her sister in. Problem? Damien asked, noticing her expression. No, just checking on my sister. Elena put her phone away. She's fine. Damien studied her for a moment. How old is she? 10. She's very self-sufficient for her age. And your parents? Elena tensed. Not in the picture. It's just us. Damien seemed to sense her reluctance to elaborate and didn't press further. It's getting late. We can continue tomorrow. Elena glanced at the clock, surprised that 2 hours had passed so quickly. I've still got some emails to finish. They can wait. I imagine you need to get home to your sister. Elena nodded, gathering her things. Same time tomorrow? Yes, I'll have the doorman add you to the approved list so you won't need a temporary card. As Elena rode the elevator down, she found herself unsettled by Damien's consideration regarding her need to get home. It didn't fit with the cold, demanding businessman image she'd constructed in her mind. But then again, people were rarely as simple as they first appeared. The next few weeks fell into a routine. Elena would finish her shift at the diner at 3 p.m., pick up Mia from school, make dinner, help with homework, and then head to Damien's penthouse by 6 p.m. She'd work until 10 p.m., then go home, exhausted but grateful for the steady progress being made on her debt. Working for Damien turned out to be less difficult than she'd anticipated. He was demanding and exacting, yes, but also surprisingly fair. He didn't waste time with trivial requests or power plays. He told her exactly what he needed, and as long as she delivered, he left her alone to work in peace. Occasionally, their interactions ventured beyond the purely professional. Damien would ask about Mia or comment on Elena's handling of a particularly difficult client. Elena found herself becoming more comfortable in his presence, though she maintained a careful distance. One evening, as she was organizing his weekend calendar, she noticed a series of empty slots. You have nothing scheduled for Sunday, she commented. That's unusual. Damien looked up from his computer. Do I need your permission to have a day off? Of course not, Elena replied evenly. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't an oversight. It's not. He turned back to his work, then added, Sunday is my mother's birthday. She passed away 5 years ago. I always keep that day free. Elena felt a rush of unexpected sympathy. I'm sorry, that must be hard. Damien shrugged, his eyes still on his screen. It's life. Everyone loses people. Yes, they do. Elena thought of her own parents, her father who had left when she was a child, and her mother who had succumbed to cancer 3 years ago, leaving Elena to raise Mia alone. But that doesn't make it any easier. Damien looked at her then, really looked at her, as if seeing something new. No, it doesn't. The moment stretched between them, a sudden connection that felt almost tangible. Then Damien's phone rang, breaking the silence. He answered it, turning away, and the moment was gone. Later that night, as Elena was preparing to leave, Damien handed her an envelope. What's this? She asked. A bonus for your efficiency this month. Elena opened the envelope to find 5 $100 bills. I can't accept this. It's not part of our arrangement. Consider it an advance on future work, Damien said, his tone making it clear the matter wasn't up for discussion. You've saved me considerable time and hassle. That has value. Elena wanted to refuse, to maintain the clear boundaries of their relationship. But she thought of Mia's upcoming school trip that she hadn't been able to afford. Swallowing her pride, she nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me, you earned it. Damien returned to his desk, dismissing her with a wave. See you tomorrow. As Elena left the penthouse, she felt conflicted. On one hand, the money would help tremendously. On the other, accepting it felt like crossing a line, becoming indebted to Damien in ways beyond their original agreement. Little did she know, Damien Lancaster was wrestling with similar thoughts. "You're distracted," Victoria Winters observed, sipping her champagne as they stood at the edge of the ballroom. The charity gala was in full swing, with Seattle's elite mingling among tables laden with auction items. "Is my company so boring?" Damien forced his attention back to the blonde woman beside him. Victoria was objectively beautiful in her red designer gown, with her hair swept up to reveal diamond earrings that matched her necklace. She was also shrewd, ambitious, and the daughter of his company's biggest investor, a fact she never let him forget. "Not at all," he replied smoothly. "Just thinking about work." "You're always thinking about work." Victoria touched his arm lightly. "That's why you need someone to help you relax." Damien resisted the urge to step away from her touch. "I'm perfectly capable of relaxing on my own." "Are you?" Victoria's smile was knowing. "Because from where I'm standing, you seem wound tighter than ever. My father mentioned you've been particularly driven at the board meetings lately. We're launching a new product line. It requires focus." Victoria laughed, the sound practiced and musical. "Focus is one thing, obsession is another. Even my father says you need balance." "I appreciate his concern." Damien scanned the room, looking for an excuse to end the conversation. Victoria followed his gaze. "Looking for someone more interesting?" "Just checking the time. I have an early meeting tomorrow." "On Sunday?" "Now I know you're lying." Victoria moved closer, her perfume enveloping him. "Why not admit you're avoiding me?" Damien met her eyes directly. "Victoria, you're an intelligent woman. You know I'm not interested in anything beyond a professional relationship." Her smile faltered only slightly. "People change their minds." "Not about this." Damien spotted James across the room and nodded to him. His assistant immediately began making his way over, providing the perfect exit strategy. "If you'll excuse me." As he walked away, Damien felt Victoria's eyes on his back. He knew she wouldn't give up easily. She had decided he was a suitable match. And Victoria Winters always got what she wanted, or at least she had until now. James met him halfway across the ballroom. "Everything all right, sir?" "Fine. Just time to leave." Damien headed for the exit, suddenly eager to escape the stifling atmosphere of forced smiles and calculated conversations. In his car, he loosened his tie and leaned back against the leather seat. His driver, Martin, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Home, sir?" Damien hesitated. The thought of returning to his empty penthouse held little appeal. "No. Drive around for a while." As the car moved through the quiet streets, Damien found himself thinking about Elena. What was she doing on a Saturday night? Was she at home with her sister or working her second job? The thought of her scrubbing floors after spending all day serving food made something twist uncomfortably in his chest. Before he could analyze the feeling, his phone rang. It was Alexander Graves, his legal counsel and oldest friend. "Tell me you've escaped the clutches of Victoria Winters," Alexander said by way of greeting. Damien smiled despite himself. "Just barely. She's becoming more persistent. That's what happens when you're one of the city's most eligible bachelors. Speaking of which, how's the new assistant working out?" "Elena? Fine, she's efficient." "Just efficient?" Alexander's tone was teasing. "The way you've been avoiding the subject, I'd expected more interesting developments." "There's nothing to develop. She works for me to pay off a debt, that's all." "If you say so. But I know you, Damien. You wouldn't have created this elaborate arrangement for just anyone." Damien frowned. "There's nothing elaborate about it. It's a practical solution to a problem. A problem you could have solved with a check and forgotten about," Alexander pointed out. "Instead, you've brought this woman into your home, your personal space, which you guard more fiercely than Fort Knox. So your point?" "My point is that you're interested in her, whether you admit it or not." Damien stared out the window, watching the city lights blur together. "She's different." "Different how?" "She doesn't care about my money or my status. If anything, she resents them. Damien remembered the flash of defiance in Elena's eyes when he'd handed her the bonus. She's proud, stubborn, completely authentic. Sounds refreshing after the Victoria winters of the world. It is, Damien admitted. But it doesn't matter. We're from different worlds. Once the debt is paid, she'll be gone. Alexander laughed. For someone so brilliant in business, you can be remarkably dense about personal matters. You're Damien Lancaster. If you want her to stay, find a reason to make it happen. After hanging up, Damien directed Martin to take him home. Alexander's words echoed in his mind. Did he want Elena to stay beyond their arrangement? And if so, why? Elena counted the tips from her Saturday night shift at Sal's Bar and Grill. Her second job, $78, not bad for a slow night. Combined with the bonus from Damien, she now had enough for Mia's school trip, and maybe even a new pair of shoes for herself. As she walked toward the bus stop, a black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down to reveal Damien's face. Need. Third ride? He asked. Elena stared at him in surprise. What are you doing here? I was at an event nearby, he explained, though he was still wearing a tuxedo that suggested someplace far more upscale than this neighborhood. Get in, it's late and this isn't the safest area. Elena hesitated. Getting into Damien's car felt like crossing yet another boundary, but the thought of waiting 20 minutes for the bus, then walking home from the stop alone? Fine. She opened the door and slid into the back seat beside him. Thank you. The interior of the car was warm and smelled of expensive leather. Damien gave the driver her address without asking, confirming Elena's suspicion that he knew more about her. Life than she was comfortable with. How was your event? She asked, trying to fill the awkward silence. Predictable. The same people having the same conversations as last month, just wearing different clothes. Damien studied her. How was your shift? Busy. Saturday nights always are. Elena was acutely aware of her worn jeans and simple blouse next to his. Perfectly tailored tuxedo. People tend to tip better when they're drinking, though, so I'm not complaining. Damien nodded, then asked unexpectedly, Why do you work so hard? 3 jobs now, if you count working for me. Elena was taken aback by the personal question. Because bills don't pay themselves, and because Mia deserves better than what I had growing up? Which was? Elena looked out the window, watching the familiar streets of her neighborhood approach. Uncertainty, never knowing if the lights would stay on or if there'd be food in the fridge. I won't let that happen to her. Damien was quiet for a moment. You're very devoted to your sister. She's all the family I have left. Elena turned back to him. What about you? Do you have family? Something flickered in Damien's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that she'd asked. A father I rarely speak to. No siblings. That sounds lonely. I don't have time to be lonely. The car pulled up in front of Elena's apartment building, a modest structure that looked even shabbier beside the luxury vehicle. Here we are. Elena reached for the door handle, then paused. Why did you really come by the bar tonight? Damien met her gaze, his expression unreadable. I was concerned about your safety. You don't need to be. I've been taking care of myself for a long time. I know. His voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. But everyone needs help sometimes. Their eyes locked, and Elena felt a strange flutter in her chest. This close, she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Smell, the subtle scent of his cologne. For a wild moment, she thought he might lean closer, and even more surprisingly, she wasn't sure she would stop him if he did. The moment broke when a car alarm went off down the street. Elena blinked and quickly opened the door. Thank you for the ride, she said, her voice slightly unsteady. Good night, Damien. Good night, Elena. She hurried into her building without looking back, her heart racing. What had just happened? Had she imagined that moment of tension, that pull between them? And more importantly, why wasn't she more disturbed by it? Elena unlocked her apartment door quietly, not wanting to wake Mia. Mrs. Patel had left a note. On the kitchen table, Mia had dinner and finished her book report. She's excited about the school trip. Guilt washed over Elena again. She was missing so much of her sister's life, working all these jobs. But what choice did she have? The debt to Damien would be paid off soon, and then she could cut back to just the diner and maybe a few shifts at the bar. Things would be easier then. But as she got ready for bed, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that letting go of her job with Damien wouldn't be as simple as she'd anticipated. Somehow, in the span of a few weeks, he had become more than just her employer. He had become a complication. Sunday morning found Damien standing in front of his mother's grave, a bouquet of white lilies in hand. The cemetery was peaceful, with only a few other visitors scattered across the carefully maintained grounds. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said quietly, placing the flowers against the headstone. "Another year." Elizabeth Lancaster had been the warmth in his childhood, a counterbalance to his father's cold ambition. She had encouraged Damien's creativity and taught him compassion, lessons his father had tried to undo after her death when Damien was just 16. "I met someone," he found himself saying, surprising even himself. He never discussed his personal life during these visits. Not romantically. "She works for me, but she's different, real in a way most people aren't." The wind rustled the leaves overhead, making patterns of light and shadow on the grave. "You would have liked her," Damien continued. "She reminds me a little of you. The same strength, the same devotion to family." He stayed for another hour, sitting on the bench across from the grave, lost in memories. By the time he left, he had come to a decision. The arrangement with Elena was nearing its end. In another month, her debt would be paid. But Damien wasn't ready to let her go. As he drove back to the city, he began formulating a plan. Elena's pride would never allow her to accept charity or special treatment, but if he could create a legitimate reason to keep her in his life, one, that benefited her as much as it did him. By the time he reached his penthouse, Damien had his strategy mapped out. Tomorrow he would offer Elena a permanent position, one with better pay, benefits, and hours that would allow her to be home with her sister in the evenings. Whether she would accept was another matter entirely. But Damien Lancaster was accustomed to getting what he wanted, and right now what he wanted was to keep Elena Carter in his life. What he hadn't yet admitted to himself was why. Monday evening, Elena arrived at the penthouse to find Damien to the kitchen rather than his office. He was standing by the counter, 2 plates of food in front of him. "You're late," he said, but without his usual edge. Elena checked her watch. "By 2 minutes. Still late." He gestured to one of the bar stools. "At the kitchen island. Sit. You must be hungry after your shift at the diner." Elena approached cautiously, eyeing the plate of what appeared to be grilled salmon, asparagus, and roasted potatoes. "What's this?" "Dinner. I had my chef prepare it before he left. I don't usually eat during my shifts here. Consider it a working dinner." Damien took a seat on the other stool. "We need to discuss your future." Elena tensed. "My future? Your debt will be cleared in another 4 weeks, Damien explained, cutting into his salmon. "I want to offer you a permanent position." Elena stared at him. "A permanent position as your personal assistant?" "Not exactly. I want you to transition to a newly created role as Community Outreach Coordinator for Lancaster Enterprises. It would be full-time Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, with benefits. You'd be responsible for managing our charitable foundation and corporate sponsorships." Elena put down her fork, stunned. "Why me? I have no experience in that field. You have exactly the experience I need. You understand struggle firsthand. You know what actually helps people, not just what looks good in press releases." Damien met her eyes. The salary would be $65,000 a year to start, with potential for growth. Elena's mind reeled. That was more than twice what she currently made from all her jobs combined. It would mean she could quit the diner and the bar, be home every evening with Mia, maybe even move to a better apartment. It was too perfect, too convenient. "Why are you really offering me this?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. "Is this because of Saturday night? Because if you think this will make me—" "This has nothing to do with Saturday night," Damien interrupted, his expression hardening. "This is a business decision. I've been looking to expand our corporate social responsibility efforts, and you've proven your capabilities over the past weeks. So this isn't personal? Damien hesitated, and in that hesitation, Elena saw the truth. It was personal, at least partly. The realization sent a confusing mix of feelings through her: flattery, wariness, and something else she wasn't ready to name. Whether there are personal elements to my decision is irrelevant, Damien finally said. The position is real, the salary is fair, and you're qualified. The rest is complicated. Elena pushed her plate away, no longer hungry. I need time to think about it. Of course, take the week. Damien stood, carrying his barely touched dinner to the sink. But Elena, this offer won't change the nature of our current arrangement. You'll complete your debt obligation as agreed, regardless of your decision. Elena nodded, relieved that at least that boundary remained clear. I should get to work. I have emails to answer. As she walked to the office, Elena felt Damien's eyes on her back. The job offer played over and over in her mind. It was an incredible opportunity, one that could change her and Mia's lives completely. But it also meant remaining connected to Damien Lancaster, a man who was quickly becoming a dangerous distraction. A man whose world was so far removed from hers that the very idea of anything beyond a professional relationship was absurd, wasn't it? He offered you what? Doris's coffee pot froze midway to the cup she was filling. Several drops splashed onto the counter. Elena wiped them up with a napkin. A full-time position, corporate outreach or something, $65,000 a year. It was Tuesday morning at Joe's diner, and Elena had just finished telling Doris about Damien's unexpected offer. The early breakfast rush was over, giving them a rare moment of quiet. Girl, you'd be crazy not to take it. Doris set down the coffee pot and planted her hands on her ample hips. Do you know how many years I've been slinging hash to make half that? I know, Elena sighed, tying her apron. It's an amazing opportunity. So what's the problem? You don't like the guy? Elena hesitated. That was the issue. She was starting to like Damien Lancaster far too much. It's complicated. He's my boss. Doris snorted. He's already your boss. 3 times over, counting this place and your bar job. That's different. This would be permanent. And I'd be moving into his world. Honey, his world pays a hell of a lot better than this one. Doris gestured around the worn diner with its cracked vinyl booths and outdated decor. Think about Mia. Think about what this could mean for her future. Mia. Elena's sister had been on her mind constantly since Damien's offer. Just last week, Mia's teacher had suggested advanced placement classes for next year, noting her exceptional math abilities. But the program required special materials, after-school activities, and probably a computer, expenses that had seemed impossible until now. You're right, Elena admitted. I should be grateful, not suspicious. I didn't say don't be suspicious, Doris corrected her, lowering her voice. Rich men don't hand out jobs like candy without wanting something in return. Just make sure you know what you're getting into. The bell above the door jingled as customers entered, ending their conversation. But Doris's warning stayed with Elena throughout her shift, mixing with her own conflicted feelings about Damien Lancaster. That evening, Elena walked into the penthouse to find Damien on the phone, pacing near the windows. His voice was tense, his free hand clenched at his side. I don't care what Charles thinks. The documents need to be ready by Friday. He noticed Elena and held up a finger, indicating she should wait. No, that's not negotiable. Make it happen. He ended the call with a frustrated sigh. Problems with legal, he explained, running a hand through his hair. It was one of the few times Elena had seen him looking less than completely composed. How was your day? Fine. Elena set her purse on her desk. I've been thinking about your offer. Damien's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. And? I have some questions first. Go ahead. Elena took a deep breath. Why me? Really? There must be dozens of qualified people with actual experience in corporate outreach. People from your world who understand how it works. Damien leaned against his desk, studying her. That's precisely why I don't want them. I'm tired of polished charity events that do nothing but make wealthy people feel better about themselves. And you think I can change that? I think you understand what really matters. His voice softened slightly. I've seen how you care for your sister, how you manage your limited resources. You're practical, honest, and you can't be bought or impressed by wealth. Elena felt a flush rising to her cheeks at his assessment. I still don't have the qualifications. Skills can be taught, integrity can't. Damien straightened. Take the Lancaster Foundation's annual gala. It raises millions, but much of it goes to overhead, fancy venues, celebrity appearances. I want someone who will push back, who'll ask the hard questions about where the money actually goes. There was a sincerity in his eyes that Elena hadn't expected. Maybe he really did want to change things, or maybe he was just very good at seeming sincere. And the timing, she pressed. Just as my debt to you is nearly paid. Damien's jaw tightened slightly. The timing is, admittedly, convenient. But the position is genuine, Elena. If you don't believe me, look into the foundation yourself. We're establishing a dedicated department, with or without you. Elena nodded slowly. I'll need a few more days to decide. Of course. Now shall we get to work? There's a board meeting tomorrow I need to prepare for. They settled into their usual routine, though Elena felt a new tension in the air. Damien seemed distracted, checking his phone frequently and responding to emails with unusual brevity. Something about the legal issue was clearly bothering him. Around 8 o'clock he received another call. From Damien's clipped responses, Elena gathered it was from Victoria Winters. The conversation ended with him saying, "Fine, dinner tomorrow at 8. Marcel's." He hung up looking distinctly displeased. "Problem?" Elena asked, trying to sound casual. "Nothing important, just a dinner I'd rather avoid." Damien returned to his computer, then added, "Victoria Winters. Her father is our largest investor." "Ah," Elena remembered the woman's name from the event invitations she'd processed. "She seems persistent." "She is." Damien's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "She's decided I'm suitable husband material." Elena felt an unexpected stab of jealousy, which she quickly suppressed. "And are you?" "Suitable, I mean." Damien looked up, his eyes meeting hers with surprising intensity. "On paper, yes. Wealthy, established, the right connections. Everything her father would approve of. But I've been down that road before. My ex-wife had a similar checklist. It didn't end well. Elena hadn't known he'd been married. The revelation made her curious, but she hesitated to pry further. Damien seemed to read her thoughts. Rebecca was from the same social circle as Victoria. We married young, divorced 3 years ago. She's now married to a French count and living in Monaco. "I'm sorry," Elena said automatically. "Don't be. It was a business arrangement that outlived its usefulness." His tone was matter-of-fact, but Elena sensed there was more to the story. "What about you? No serious relationships?" The personal question caught her off guard. "No time. Between work and Mia, no one special in the past?" Elena thought of Michael, her college boyfriend. They'd been together for 2 years before her mother's illness had forced her to drop out and take care of Mia. He'd promised to stand by her, but when the reality of her new responsibilities had set in, he'd gradually drifted away. "There was someone once," she admitted, "but he couldn't handle the fact that Mia would always come first." Damien nodded, as if her answer confirmed something for him. "That's the difference between our worlds, Elena. In mine, people measure relationships by what they gain, in yours by what they're willing to sacrifice." The observation hung between them, honest and a little sad. Before Elena could respond, Damien's phone rang again. This time his expression darkened as he checked the caller. "Hi, Dee. I need to take this," he said, standing. "It might be a while. You can head home early." Elena hesitated, concerned by the sudden tension in his voice. "Is everything okay?" "Just business." But his grim expression suggested otherwise. As Elena gathered her things, she heard Damien's voice from the balcony where he'd taken the call. "How bad is it?" A pause. "I see. No, don't do anything until I get there. I'm on my way." He came back inside, already reaching for his suit jacket. "I need to go to the office. There's an issue with the new product launch." "At this hour?" "Unfortunately, Corporate espionage doesn't keep regular business hours. Damien checked his watch. "I'll see you tomorrow, Elena." After he left, Elena found herself lingering in the empty penthouse. On the surface, Damien's life seemed perfect. Wealth, power, success. But tonight, she'd glimpsed the cracks in that facade. The unwanted dinner engagement, the failed marriage, the late-night crisis. Maybe their worlds weren't as different as she'd thought. Maybe they both wore masks, just of different kinds. Elena didn't see Damien the next day. When she arrived at the penthouse at 6, she found a note on her desk. "Working late at the office. Please process the attached files. DL." She spent the evening alone, organizing documents and responding to emails, all the while wondering about the issue that had called him away so urgently. The business news sites mentioned nothing about Lancaster Enterprises, which seemed like a good sign. When she returned the following evening, Damien was back at his desk looking tired but composed. His suit was as impeccable as always, but there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept much. "Everything okay with the product launch?" Elena asked as she set down her purse. Damien looked up, surprised by her question. "Yes, we handled it." "Good." Elena moved to her desk, noting the unusual amount of coffee cups scattered around his workspace. "You look like you could use some rest." A hint of a smile crossed his face. "Is that your professional assessment?" "Just an observation," noted. Damien reached for one of the files on his desk. "I need you to prepare these documents for my meeting tomorrow. They need to be organized by date and summarized." Elena took the file, recognizing it as information about the Lancaster Foundation's previous charity events. "Is this for me to review as part of my decision?" "Partly. It's also for the board meeting where I'll be proposing the expanded community outreach department." Elena raised an eyebrow. "You're moving forward with it whether I accept the position or not." "As I said, the position is genuine." Damien met her eyes steadily. "But I still hope you'll take it." The sincerity in his voice made something flutter in Elena's chest. "I'll let you know by the end of the week." As she worked through the charity documents, Elena was impressed despite herself. The Lancaster Foundation had donated millions to various causes over the years, from education initiatives to healthcare research. But Damien was right. Much of it went to high-profile galas and events where the wealthy could network while feeling charitable. Around 9, Damien's phone rang. He checked the ID and frowned. "I need to take this." He walked out to the balcony, closing the door behind him. Through the glass, Elena could see him pacing, his expression growing increasingly agitated. When he returned, his jaw was tight with anger. "Problems?" she asked cautiously. "Victoria." He practically spat the name. "She's gone to my father with some absurd investment idea. Now he's pressuring me to consider it despite the obvious conflict of interest." "Your father?" Elena was surprised. "I thought you didn't speak much." "We don't, unless he wants something." Damien ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Elena had come to recognize as a sign of frustration. "He may be retired, but he still thinks he runs the company." "What will you do?" "What I always do. Listen politely, then do what needs to be done." Damien checked his watch. "It's getting late, you should head home." Elena gathered her things, but paused at the door. "Damien, if you need to talk about any of this, I'm a good listener." He looked up, surprise and something softer flickering across his face. "Thank you, but this is my problem to handle. Not everything has to be handled alone." Elena smiled slightly. "Something I've had to learn myself." She left before he could respond, feeling oddly bold. It was the first time she'd offered him anything beyond her professional assistance, crossing that invisible line between employer and friend. Was that what they were becoming? And why did the thought make her heart beat faster? By Friday, Elena had made her decision. The more she learned about the Lancaster Foundation, the more she believed she could make a real difference there. And the salary would transform her and Mia's lives completely. As for her growing feelings for Damien, she would keep those firmly in check. He was offering her a job, not a relationship. The fact that her heart raced whenever he walked into a room was her problem to manage, not his. She arrived at the penthouse that evening with her answer ready. But instead of Damien, she found Victoria Winters sitting on one of the living room couches, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders, her red dress highlighting every curve. Victoria looked up from her phone, her perfectly shaped eyebrows rising in surprise. "Who are you?" Elena straightened, suddenly conscious of her simple work clothes. "Elena Carter. I'm Mr. Lancaster's personal assistant." "Oh." Victoria studied her with new interest. "The waitress who hit his car. He mentioned you." The casual dismissal in her tone made Elena bristle. "Is Mr. Lancaster here? He's taking a call in the bedroom." Victoria waved a manicured hand toward the hallway. "We're going to the symphony tonight." The information shouldn't have hurt, but it did. Elena moved to her desk, trying to focus on setting up her computer rather than imagining Damien and Victoria at the symphony together. Victoria followed her, leaning against the doorframe of the office. "So you've been working for Damien for what, a month now?" "About that, yes. And how are you finding it?" Victoria's tone was friendly, but her eyes were calculating. "Damien can be demanding." "He's fair," Elena replied carefully. "What is it you do, Ms. Winters?" Victoria laughed, a practiced musical sound. "Do? I serve on the boards of several charities. Otherwise, I manage my investments." In other words, Elena thought, she was professionally rich. "How nice." "It is," Victoria agreed, missing or ignoring the hint of sarcasm. "You know, I was surprised when Damien hired someone like you. He usually prefers assistants with more polish." Before Elena could respond to the thinly veiled insult, Damien emerged from the hallway, phone in hand. He stopped short at the sight of them talking. "Elena, I wasn't expecting you tonight." He looked between the two women, his expression unreadable. "It's Friday," Elena said simply. "My regular schedule." "Of course." Damien checked his watch. "Victoria, we should get going if we want to make the opening." Victoria moved to his side, placing a proprietary hand on his arm. "It was fascinating meeting you, Elena. Perhaps Damien will bring you to one of our charity events sometime. We're always looking for new perspectives." The condescension in her voice made Elena's teeth clench. "Perhaps. Have a nice evening." As they left, Damien glanced back at Elena, an apology in his eyes that only made the knot in her stomach tighten further. The door closed behind them, leaving Elena alone in the penthouse that suddenly seemed far too large and empty. She sat at her desk, trying to focus on work, but her mind kept drifting to Damien and Victoria at the symphony. Would he enjoy her company? Would her perfectly manicured hand find its way into his during the performance? Would they end the evening with a kiss? "Stop it," Elena muttered to herself. Damien's personal life was none of her business. If he wanted to date Victoria Winters, that was his choice. But as the evening wore on, Elena couldn't shake her disappointment. She'd come ready to accept his job offer, to take a leap of faith into his world. Now she wondered if she'd been naive. Perhaps Doris was right. Perhaps there was something he wanted from her that she wasn't willing to give. By the time Elena left the penthouse, she had changed her mind. She wouldn't take the job. She would finish paying her debt and walk away from Damien Lancaster and his complicated world for good. The symphony was exactly as tedious as Damien had expected. The music was beautiful, but Victoria's running commentary during every pause destroyed any chance of enjoying it. Worse, his mind kept returning to the look on Elena's face when he'd left with Victoria. Surprise mixed with something that looked unsurprisingly like hurt. "You haven't heard a word I've said," Victoria accused as they walked out of the concert hall. "You've been distracted all evening." "I have a lot on my mind," Damien replied, scanning the crowd for their driver. "Your father mentioned there were some issues with the new product line." Damien tensed. "My father needs to learn the meaning of confidentiality. He's just concerned about the company, about you." Victoria moved closer, her expensive perfume enveloping him. "We all are. I appreciate the concern, but it's misplaced." Damien spotted Martin with the car and guided Victoria in that direction, careful to maintain some distance between them. "Everything is under control." "Is it? Because you look exhausted." "Damien, you're working too hard, taking on too much." Victoria's voice softened to what she probably thought was a caring tone. You need someone to take care of you. I can take care of myself, but you shouldn't have to. Victoria placed her hand on his arm again, a gesture she'd been repeating all evening. That's what partners are for. Damien resisted the urge to pull away. We're not partners, Victoria. Not yet. Her smile was confident. But my father and I believe in your vision for Lancaster Enterprises. With our combined resources, we could expand globally even faster than you've planned. And there it was, the real reason for her persistent pursuit. Not love or even attraction, but a business merger disguised as a relationship. Exactly the kind of arrangement he'd sworn never to enter into again after Rebecca. I appreciate the offer, he said carefully as they reached the car, but I prefer to keep business and personal matters separate. Victoria's smile faltered only slightly. For now, perhaps, but I'm patient, Damien. The drive to Victoria's home was mercifully short. When they arrived, she turned to him expectantly. Would you like to come in for a nightcap? Thank you, but no, I have an early meeting tomorrow. Damien remained firmly in his seat. Victoria's eyes narrowed briefly before her social mask slid back into place. Another time, then. She leaned in and kissed his cheek, lingering a moment. Too long. Good night, Damien. As the car pulled away, Damien exhaled slowly, feeling as though he'd just escaped a trap. Victoria Winters was not a woman accustomed to being refused, and she was unlikely to give up easily. Where to, sir? Martin asked from the driver's seat. Damien checked his watch. It was nearly midnight. Home. As they drove through the quiet streets, Damien found himself thinking of Elena again. Had she stayed to finish her work, or had she left after he'd gone? And why had seeing her talking to Victoria made him so uneasy? The answer was simpler than he wanted to admit. Elena had become important to him in ways that went beyond her role as his assistant. Her straightforward manner, her integrity, her dedication to her sister, all of it had drawn him in, making him look forward to their evening sessions in a way he'd never anticipated, and now he'd hurt her. He'd seen it in her eyes when he left with Victoria. Whether it was personal or professional disappointment didn't matter. He'd given Elena reason to doubt his intentions, to question the sincerity of his job offer. As the car pulled into his building's garage, Damien made a decision. He would clear things up with Elena tomorrow, explain that Victoria meant nothing to him. He would reassure her that the job offer was genuine, unrelated to any personal feelings he might be developing. What he wouldn't admit, even to himself, was how much he hoped she would say yes, not just to the job, but to the possibility of something more. Saturday morning found Elena at the kitchen table, helping Mia with her weekend homework. The apartment was filled with the scent of fresh coffee and the blueberry muffins they'd baked together, a rare treat made possible by the bonus Damien had given her. I don't understand why X has to equal anything, Mia complained, frowning at her algebra worksheet. Why can't it just be X, Elena laughed. Because math needs answers, not mysteries. Here, let me show you another way to look at it. As she guided Mia through the problem, Elena's phone buzzed with a text. She ignored it, focusing on her sister, but it buzzed again a moment later, and then again. Someone really wants to talk. To you, Mia observed. Elena sighed and checked her phone. 3 messages from Damien. Need to speak with you about the position. Are you available today? It's important. Elena stared at the screen, torn. Part of her wanted to ignore him, to enjoy her Saturday with Mia without complications. But another part, a part she wasn't proud of, wanted to see him, to hear what he had to say. Who is it? Mia asked, peering at the phone. My boss. The one. With the fancy car I hit, Mia's eyes widened. Is he still mad about that? No, it's not about the car. He offered me a new job. A better one than the diner? Mia asked hopefully. Elena nodded. Much better, but I'm not sure if I should take it. Why not? How could she explain to a 10-year-old the complicated feelings she was developing for Damien Lancaster? How seeing him with Victoria had made her stomach twist with jealousy. How she feared becoming just another conquest for a man who could have anyone. It's complicated, sweetie. Mia gave her the exasperated look only pre-teens can perfect. Grown-ups always say that when they don't want to explain things. Elena smiled despite herself. You're right. I guess I'm afraid of making a mistake. Mom always said being afraid to try was the biggest mistake of all. Mia's mention of their mother was casual but poignant. Maybe you should at least talk to him, out of the mouths of babes. Elena sighed and picked up her phone. You're pretty smart for a kid who can't solve for X, Mia grinned. I'm smart about people stuff. Math is your department. Elena typed a quick reply to Damien. I'm with Mia today, can talk Monday at work. His response came immediately. This won't wait until Monday. May I come to you? We can meet at the cafe near your building. Bring Mia. Elena hesitated. The thought of Damien meeting Mia made her nervous, as if two separate worlds were colliding. But maybe that was the point. If she took this job, her worlds would collide. Mia would eventually meet Damien and the other people in his corporate circle. Fine. Golden Cup Cafe at 2 p.m., she replied. After sending the text, Elena realized her hands were shaking slightly. Looks like we're meeting my boss for coffee this afternoon, she told Mia. Cool, is he nice? Elena considered the question. He's, complicated. There you go again. Mia rolled her eyes, then looked back at her math problem. Okay, I think I get it now. If x equals 7, then the whole equation works out. See, mystery solved. Elena ruffled her sister's hair. Let's finish these problems, so we have time to get ready. As they worked through the remaining math exercises, Elena couldn't help but wonder what was so urgent that Damien couldn't wait until Monday. And how would he interact with Mia? The Damien she knew was all business all the time. She couldn't imagine him making small talk with a 10-year-old, but then again, he'd been surprising her from the beginning. The Golden Cup Cafe was a small, cozy place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. It was popular with college students and young families from the neighborhood, a far cry from the upscale establishments Damien usually frequented. Elena and Mia arrived a few minutes early and found a table near the ET back. Elena had changed 3 times before settling on jeans and a simple blue blouse, casual enough for a Saturday, but nice enough to feel confident. Mia wore her favorite purple dress with leggings, insisting that meeting Elena's boss was a special occasion. Is that him? Mia whispered as the door opened, admitting a tall man in what appeared to be the most casual outfit Elena had ever seen Damien wear, dark jeans and a grey button-down shirt with no tie. He still looked expensive and out of place among the cafe's eclectic decor. Several heads turned as Damien scanned the room. When his eyes found Elena, his expression softened slightly. He made his way to their table with his usual confident stride. Elena, thank you for meeting me. His voice was formal, but carried an undertone of what might have been nervousness. He turned to Mia with a slight smile. And you must be Mia. Your sister talks about you often. Mia stared up at him with undisguised curiosity. She talks about you too. You're the one with the dented car. Elena felt her cheeks flush. Mia! But Damien chuckled, a genuine sound that Elena had rarely heard from him. That's right. Though it's fixed now. He sat down across from them, seeming both out of place and strangely at ease. A waitress approached, and Damien ordered black coffee while Elena and Mia chose hot chocolates. So, Elena said when the waitress left, what was so urgent it couldn't wait until Monday? Damien's expression grew serious. I wanted to clear up a misunderstanding about Victoria Winters. Elena felt a knot form in her stomach. That's not necessary. Your personal life is your business. Ordinarily, yes, but in this case it affects your decision about the position I offered. Damien leaned forward slightly. Victoria is not someone I'm involved with romantically. She's the daughter of an important investor, nothing more. You don't owe me an explanation, Elena insisted, aware of Mia watching their exchange with interest. Perhaps not, but I want you to make your decision based on facts, not assumptions. Damien's eyes held hers intently. The job offer is genuine, Elena. It has nothing to do with Victoria or any personal complications. The sincerity in his voice was hard to doubt. Elena found herself wanting to believe him, wanting to trust that his interest in her abilities was professional and genuine. Before she could respond, their drinks arrived. Mia immediately added extra marshmallows to her hot chocolate, creating a minor distraction. Mia, Damien said after taking a sip of his coffee. Your sister mentioned you're doing very well in school. Mia nodded enthusiastically. I got into the advanced program for next year. Elena's been helping me with algebra today. That's impressive. I always enjoyed mathematics myself. Really? Mia looked suddenly interested. Can you help me with my homework? Elena's good, but sometimes she makes it more complicated. Mia! Elena protested again, but Damien was already reaching for the notebook Mia had pulled from her backpack. Let's see what we're working with here. What followed was something Elena could never have predicted. Damien Lancaster, CEO of a multinational corporation, patiently explaining algebra to a 10-year-old girl over hot chocolate in a shabby cafe. He simplified concepts with practical examples, making Mia laugh with scenarios involving pizza slices and cartoon characters. Elena watched in amazement as Mia's initial shyness gave way to engagement and then excitement as problems that had seemed impossible suddenly made sense. Damien showed a patience and approachability she'd never seen from him before. That makes so much more sense now, Mia exclaimed after they'd worked through several problems. You're really good at explaining things. I had a good teacher once, Damien replied, a hint of sadness crossing his face. My mother taught math before she married my father. It was a personal detail offered freely, something rare from the usually private man. Elena found herself touched by the small revelation. Mia, with a child's lack of restraint, asked, "Where is your mum now?" She passed away when I was 16. Damien's voice was gentle but matter-of-fact. I'm sorry, Mia said sincerely. Our mum died too 3 years ago. I know. Damien glanced at Elena. Your sister told me. I'm sorry for your loss. Mia nodded, then said with the directness of childhood, I like you. You don't talk to me like I'm stupid, like some grown-ups do. Damien smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression that transformed his usually serious face. I don't think anyone could mistake you for stupid, Mia Carter. The conversation shifted to Mia's school, her art projects, and her dreams of becoming a scientist. Damien listened with what appeared to be genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and offering encouragement. It was nearly 4 o'clock when Mia announced she needed to use the restroom, leaving Elena and Damien alone for the first time. She's remarkable, Damien said, watching Mia walk away. You've done an amazing job with her. Thank you. Elena studied him, trying to reconcile this version of Damien with the stern businessman she'd first met. You're good with her. I wouldn't have expected that. Children are straightforward. They say what they mean and mean what they say. Damien met her eyes. It's refreshing after spending most of my time with people who have hidden agendas. People like Victoria Winters? Elena couldn't help asking. Exactly like Victoria. Damien's expression hardened slightly. Last night was a business obligation, nothing more. Her father has been pushing for us to become closer, for business reasons. I've been resisting. Why tell me this? Because I need you to understand that my offer is legitimate. Your presence at Lancaster Enterprises would be valuable, regardless of any personal considerations. Elena felt her heartbeat quicken at the implication. And are there personal considerations, Damien? He held her gaze steadily. I think we both know there are, but I wouldn't let that influence a business decision, and neither should you. The honesty of his answer took her breath away. Before she could respond, Mia returned, breaking the moment. Can we get cookies before we go? She asked, eyeing the display case near the counter. Elena welcomed the interruption. Sure, pick one out. As Mia debated between chocolate chip and snickerdoodle, Damien turned back to Elena. Have you made a decision about the position? Elena took a deep breath. Despite her reservations, despite the complications of her growing feelings for Damien, she couldn't deny that this opportunity could change everything for her and Mia. Yes, she said finally. I'll take it. The relief and pleasure that spread across Damien's face made something warm bloom in her chest. You won't regret it, he promised. I hope not, Elena replied softly. Because I'm trusting you, Damien. Don't make me regret that. I won't. The conviction in his voice was absolute. As they left the cafe, Damien walking them back to their apartment building, Elena felt as though she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. One full of possibilities, but also potential heartbreak. Working closely with Damien would mean constantly navigating the attraction between them, maintaining professional boundaries while their personal connection deepened. It was a risk. But looking at Mia, happily chatting with Damien about school and math and a future suddenly more accessible than before, Elena decided it was a risk worth taking. What she didn't know was that while she was taking a chance on Damien, forces were already in motion that would test that trust to its limits. Victoria Winters was not a woman who accepted defeat gracefully, and she had plans of her own for Damien Lancaster, plans that didn't include a former waitress from the wrong side of town. 2 months later, Elena sat at her new desk in the Lancaster Enterprises headquarters, reviewing applications for community grant funding. Her office, though small compared to the executive suites, featured a wall of windows overlooking the city and sleek modern furniture that still felt slightly foreign to her. The transition from waitress to corporate outreach coordinator had been both easier and harder than she'd expected. Easier because the work itself came naturally to her, identifying genuine needs in the community, cutting through bureaucratic language to find meaningful projects, advocating for practical solutions rather than flashy publicity stunts. Harder because navigating the corporate culture, with its unspoken rules and political undercurrents, was like learning a foreign language. Through it all, Damien had been supportive but careful to maintain professional boundaries in the office. Their evening work sessions in his penthouse had ended, replaced by formal meetings in conference rooms with other staff present. Elena told herself this was for the best, even as she missed the quiet intimacy of those nights. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting Marcy, her administrative assistant. Instead, Victoria Winters glided into the office, immaculately dressed in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Elena's monthly salary. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, highlighting the perfect angles of her face. "Elena, working hard, I see." Victoria's smile was pleasant, but her eyes were cold as they swept over Elena's modest office. Elena straightened in her chair. "Victoria, what can I do for you?" "I was just meeting with the board about the upcoming charity gala." Victoria perched on the edge of a visitor chair, not quite sitting down. "Since you're in charge of community outreach now, I thought we should coordinate." Elena nodded, though she suspected Victoria's visit had little to do with actual coordination. "Of course. What did you have in mind?" "Well, the gala has always been a cornerstone of the Lancaster Foundation's fundraising efforts. I've chaired the committee for the past 3 years. Victoria examined her manicured nails. "Damien mentioned you had some ideas about changing the approach." "I've suggested redirecting some of the gala budget toward direct community investments." "Yes." Elena kept her voice neutral, though she could feel the tension emanating from Victoria. "The return on investment would be significantly higher." Victoria's smile tightened. "The gala isn't just about immediate returns. It's about relationships, networking, cementing the Lancaster name in the right circles." "I understand that. But $500,000 for one night's event seems excessive when there are children in this city who don't have adequate school supplies." "How pedestrian." Victoria's mask slipped, revealing a flash of contempt before she recovered her polished demeanor. "But I suppose that's the perspective Damien was looking for when he hired you. So, authentic." The word sounded like an insult coming from her glossy lips. Elena maintained her composure with effort. "Was there something specific about the gala you wanted to discuss?" she asked. Victoria stood, smoothing her already perfect suit. "Just that the board has already approved the budget and venue. Your adjustments will have to wait until next year." Elena felt a flare of frustration but kept it from showing on her face. "I see. Thank you for letting me know." Victoria moved to the door, then paused. "You know, Elena, you've done remarkably well for someone with your background. But this world, Damien's world, it takes more than good intentions to succeed here." "I'm aware of that." "Are you?" Victoria's smile turned almost pitying. Damien has always had a soft spot for charity cases, but eventually he returns to where he belongs. Before Elena could respond to the barb, Victoria was gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of her expensive perfume and the sting of her words. Elena took a deep breath, trying to shake off the encounter. Victoria's visit had been a power play, nothing more, a reminder that Elena was an outsider in this world of wealth and privilege. Her phone buzzed with a text from Damien. "Meeting with community center representatives at 2. Your presence requested. Elena." Checked her watch. That gave her just enough time to review the community center proposal again before heading to the conference room. She pushed thoughts of Victoria aside, focusing instead on the work that had brought her here, work that was already making a difference. Whatever game Victoria Winters was playing, Elena refused to be a pawn in it. Damien watched Elena across the conference table as she walked the community center directors through potential funding options. She was in her element, confident and passionate as she outlined how Lancaster Enterprises could support their after-school programs. In the 2 months since she joined the company officially, Elena had transformed the community outreach department from a public relations exercise into a genuine force for change. She'd redirected resources, challenged wasteful spending, and built relationships with grassroots organizations that had previously been overlooked. More importantly, she'd maintained her integrity in an environment that often corrupted it. When board members suggested flashy but ineffective initiatives, Elena pushed back with data and practical alternatives. When socialites like Victoria tried to use the foundation for self-promotion, Elena redirected their energy toward meaningful contributions. She had earned the respect of most of his executive team through sheer competence and determination. Even his father, notoriously difficult to impress, had commented on the positive press Lancaster Enterprises was receiving for its community work. As the meeting concluded, Damien stood to shake hands with the community center representatives. "We look forward to finalizing the details of our partnership," he told them. "Ms. Carter will coordinate next steps." After they left, Elena began gathering her materials. "That went well. Their program aligns perfectly with our educational initiative. Thanks. To your groundwork." Damien closed the conference room door, giving them a rare moment of privacy. "You've done exceptional work, Elena." She looked up, a hint of color touching her cheeks at the praise. "I'm just doing my job. You're doing far more than that, and you know it." Damien moved closer, noting how she tensed slightly at his approach. They had both been careful to maintain professional distance at work, but the attraction between them remained, simmering beneath the surface of every interaction. "I saw Victoria coming from your office earlier," he said, changing the subject. "Did she give you trouble about the gala?" Elena's expression confirmed his suspicion. "Nothing I can't handle. She informed me that the board has already approved the traditional budget and venue." Damien frowned. "That's not accurate. The budget review is scheduled for next week's meeting." "Well, she seemed quite confident." Elena shrugged, but Damien could see the incident had bothered her. Victoria often confuses what she wants with reality. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'll speak with her." "That's not necessary. I can handle Victoria Winters." "I know you can, but this is about her misrepresenting board decisions, not about you." Damien hesitated, then added, "She's been particularly difficult since you joined the company." Elena met his eyes directly. "Because she sees me as competition, not professionally, personally." The blunt assessment caught him off guard. "Elena." "It's fine, Damien. We've both been very careful to keep things professional." Her voice was steady, but something flickered in her eyes. Regret, perhaps? "It's for the best." Before he could respond, his phone rang, his father's ringtone. Damien hesitated, torn between answering and continuing this conversation that had suddenly veered into territory they'd been avoiding for months. "You should take that," Elena said, gathering the last of her materials. "I need to update the community center proposal anyway." Reluctantly, Damien answered the call as Elena slipped out of the conference room. "Father, what can I do for you?" You can explain why I'm hearing from Victoria Winters that you're diverting half the gala budget to some after-school program." Gerald Lancaster's voice was sharp with disapproval. That gala has been a Lancaster tradition for 20 years. Damien suppressed a surge of anger. Of course, Victoria had gone straight to his father after failing to intimidate Elena. The budget hasn't been finalized yet, he replied evenly. We're exploring options to maximize our community impact while maintaining our social presence. Don't give me corporate speak, Damien. This has your new hire's fingerprints all over it, the waitress with the sob story. Damien's grip tightened on his phone. Elena Carter has an MBA she earned while working full-time and raising her sister. Her sob story is one of remarkable determination and intelligence. She's still out of her depth in our world. Gerald's dismissive tone made Damien's jaw clench. Victoria is concerned that she's losing her influence, Damien interrupted. The gala has become an excuse for socialities to wear designer gowns while pretending to care about charity. Elena is trying to bring it back to its original purpose, actually helping people. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I sound personally invested in this woman. Damien chose his words carefully. I'm invested in her success as an employee because her success is the company's success. Is that all it is? His father's voice had turned shrewd. Because Victoria seems to think there's more to it. Victoria should focus on her own affairs instead of inventing drama. Gerald chuckled, the sound devoid of warmth. She's ambitious, that one. Reminds me of Rebecca sometimes. The comparison sent a chill through Damien. Rebecca, his ex-wife, had also been ambitious. Ambitious enough to marry him for his position and wealth, then leave when a better opportunity presented itself. Elena is nothing like Rebecca, he said firmly. Or Victoria, for that matter. Perhaps not. But consider the optics, Damien. The board won't look kindly on you becoming involved with an employee, especially one with her background. There is no involvement to consider, Damien replied, though the words felt hollow. And the board should be focused on results, which Elena is delivering. Just be careful, son. Not everyone has your best interests at heart. After ending the call, Damien stood at the conference room window, looking out at the city below. His father's warning, though self-serving, contained a kernel of truth. Not everyone had his best interests at heart. Victoria certainly didn't. But Elena did. In every interaction, every project, every challenge she faced, Elena had proven herself to be exactly what she appeared: honest, dedicated, and utterly genuine. She was the opposite of the calculated social climbers he had surrounded himself with for years, and he was falling in love with her. The realization didn't shock him as much as it should have. Perhaps he had known for weeks, months even, since that day at the cafe when he'd watched her with Mia, seeing the fierce love and protection she offered her sister. The question now was what to do about it. The professional boundaries between them existed for good reason. He was technically her superior, though she reported primarily to the board for her foundation work. Any relationship would invite scrutiny, gossip, and accusations of favoritism. But the alternative, continuing to deny what was growing between them, was becoming increasingly difficult to bear. Damien checked his watch. The annual Lancaster Foundation Gala was scheduled for this weekend. Perhaps there, away from the office environment, they could finally have an honest conversation about their future. You look beautiful, Mia said, her eyes wide as she watched Elena apply the finishing touches to her makeup. Elena studied her reflection in the mirror of their new apartment. The black evening gown she'd splurged on for the gala was simple but elegant, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt that made her feel almost like she belonged in the world she was about to enter. Thanks, sweetheart. Elena turned to her sister, who was sprawled on the bed in pajamas covered with science formulas, a gift from Damien after she'd aced a difficult math test. Are you sure you're okay staying with Mrs. Patel tonight? I could still try to find someone to bring as a +1 so you could come. Mia rolled her eyes. I told you, Stacy's staying over at Mrs. Patel's too. We're having a sleepover. It's way more fun than some boring grown-up party. Okay, Elena laughed, relieved that Mia was adjusting so well to their new circumstances. The move to a safer neighborhood, the better school, the lack of constant financial stress, all of it had helped Mia blossom even further. And though Elena was careful not to give her sister false expectations, She couldn't deny that Damien had become something of a presence in their lives. He occasionally joined them for dinner, helped Mia with difficult homework problems, and once even attended her science fair, standing proudly beside Elena as Mia explained her project to the judges. "Do you think Damien will dance with you at the party?" Mia asked, a mischievous glint in her eye. Elena felt her cheeks warm. "It's not that kind of party. Really, it's for charity." "You can still dance at charity parties," Mia insisted, "and he likes you. A lot." "What makes you say that?" Elena asked, trying to sound casual as she gathered her clutch and wrap. "Because of how he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching, like you're the most interesting person in the world." Mia hopped off the bed. "And because he keeps finding reasons to see us outside of work, even though you're not his assistant anymore. Out of the mouths of babes," Elena thought. She'd been telling herself that Damien's continued presence in their lives was just professional mentorship. But Mia's observation cut through that pretense. "It's complicated, sweetie. We work together." "Grown-ups always make things complicated," Mia declared with the confidence of youth. "If you like someone and they like you, what's the problem?" Elena smiled at her sister's simplified view of the world. "When you're older, you'll understand." "I doubt it," Mia replied skeptically. "I'm never going to make things that complicated." The doorbell rang, signaling Mrs. Patel's arrival. After settling Mia with their neighbor and her friend, Elena headed. Downstairs, where a car Damien had insisted on sending was waiting. As she settled into the luxurious back seat, she couldn't help but reflect on how much her life had changed in just a few months. From struggling waitress to corporate executive. From barely making ends meet to financial security. From crashing her bicycle into a stranger's car to what? That was the question that lingered as the car made its way toward the Grand Hotel hosting the gala. What exactly was happening between her and Damien Lancaster? The Lancaster Foundation annual gala was every bit as opulent as Elena had expected. The hotel ballroom had been transformed into a winter wonderland, with crystal decorations, ice sculptures, and thousands of twinkling lights. Seattle's elite moved through the space in designer evening wear, sipping champagne and bidding on luxury items in the silent auction. Elena had arrived alone, but was quickly joined by James, Damien's executive assistant, who had been unexpectedly kind to her since she joined the company. "First gala?" he asked, handing her a glass of champagne. "Is it that obvious?" Elena smoothed her dress self-consciously. "Only because you're actually looking at the charity information instead of scanning the room for celebrities." James smiled warmly. "You've made quite an impression, you know. The foundation has never been more focused on actual results." "I appreciate that, though not everyone shares your enthusiasm for the changes." James followed her gaze to where Victoria Winters stood holding court in a circle of admirers, her red gown ensuring she was the center of attention. "Ah, the Winters contingent." James lowered his voice. "Don't let her intimidate you. Her influence has been waning since you came on board." "I'm not intimidated," Elena replied honestly, "just aware of the politics." "Smart woman." James nodded approvingly. "Oh, look who's finally arrived." Eleanor turned to see Damien entering the ballroom, looking devastatingly handsome in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. As always, his presence commanded attention, conversations pausing as people noticed his arrival. What caught Eleanor's attention, however, was the older man beside him, tall with silver hair and features that resembled Damien's, though harder and colder. Gerald Lancaster, Damien's father, rarely attended company functions since his retirement. "I didn't expect to see Mr. Lancaster Sr. here tonight," she murmured to James. "Neither did I. He usually avoids these events." James looked concerned. This could be interesting. Across the room, Victoria immediately detached from her admirers and moved toward Damien and his father, her red dress cutting a path through the crowd. Elena watched as Victoria greeted Gerald with practiced familiarity, placing a kiss on his cheek before taking Damien's arm possessively. "The battle begins," James commented dryly. "You might want to prepare yourself." Victoria views tonight as her opportunity to cement her position in Damien's life. Elena took a sip of her champagne, trying to ignore the twist of jealousy in her stomach. "That's his business, not mine." James gave her a knowing look. We both know that's not entirely true. Before Elena could respond, Damien spotted her across the room. Even from a distance, she could see his expression brighten, though he quickly schooled it back to professional neutrality. He said something to Victoria and his father, then made his way toward Elena. "Ms. Carter," he greeted her formally, though his eyes conveyed a warmth that was anything but professional. "I'm glad you could make it, Mr. Lancaster." Elena matched his formal tone. "The gala looks wonderful, thanks to your team's work behind the scenes." Damien turned to include James in the conversation, but his assistant had discreetly disappeared. "How convenient," he murmured, a hint of a smile touching his lips. "Your father came," Eleanor observed. "I wasn't expecting that." Damien's expression tightened slightly. "Neither was I. Victoria convinced him it was important to show family unity tonight." "I see." Eleanor glanced toward Victoria, who was watching them with barely concealed displeasure. "She looks lovely. She looks exactly like what she is, a beautiful facade with nothing of substance behind it." Damien's bluntness surprised her. He offered his arm. "Would you walk with me? There are some board members I'd like you to meet." Eleanor placed her hand on his arm, trying to ignore the electricity that seemed to flow between them at the contact. As they moved through the crowd, she was aware of the curious glances and whispered comments that followed them. "People are talking," she murmured. "People always talk," Damien replied, unconcerned. "Let them." The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and conversations about the Foundation's work. Eleanor found herself warming to several of the board members, who seemed genuinely interested in her ideas for community outreach. Others were clearly from Victoria's camp, their politeness barely masking their skepticism about Eleanor's background and qualifications. Throughout it all, Damien remained at her side, his support quiet but unmistakable. Whenever the conversation veered toward uncomfortable territory, her lack of social connections or experience with high society events, he smoothly redirected to her accomplishments and vision for the Foundation. It was during one such conversation that Victoria appeared, champagne glass in hand, her smile brittle. "Damien, darling, your father is looking for you," she said, placing her hand on his arm. "Something about an important announcement." Damien frowned. "What announcement?" "I wouldn't want to spoil the surprise." Victoria's eyes slid to Elena, a hint of triumph in them. "I'm sure Miss Carter won't mind if I borrow you for a few minutes." Before Damien could respond, Gerald Lancaster's voice came over the sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for a moment." The crowd quieted, turning toward the small stage where Gerald stood at the microphone, commanding the room with the same natural authority his son possessed. "As many of you know, the Lancaster Foundation has been a cornerstone of our family's commitment to this community for over 3 decades, Gerald began. "Tonight, I'm pleased to announce an expansion of that commitment." Victoria tugged at Damien's arm. "You should be up there with him." Damien remained where he was, his expression growing increasingly wary as his father continued. "Lancaster Enterprises will be doubling its charitable giving this year, focusing on education initiatives for underprivileged youth." Gerald paused for the appreciative murmurs and applause. "This renewed commitment comes at a time of transition for our family and company." Eleanor felt Damien tense beside her. Whatever was coming, he hadn't been prepared for it. "Which brings me to my second announcement," Gerald continued, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Damien and Victoria. "It gives me great pleasure to announce the engagement of my son, Damien Lancaster, to Victoria Winters, daughter of our longtime friend and business partner, Charles Winters." The ballroom erupted in applause and exclamations of surprise. Elena felt as though the floor had dropped out from beneath her feet. She turned to Damien, whose face had gone completely still, fury building behind his controlled expression. "Damien?" she whispered, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. "This is the first I'm hearing of it," he said through clenched teeth. "Excuse me." He strode toward the stage, leaving Elena standing alone in the midst of the celebrating crowd. Victoria, who had remained oddly silent during the announcement, gave Elena a look of pure triumph before following Damien. Elena felt frozen in place, the buzz of conversation around her fading to white noise. People were looking at her now, some with pity, others with barely concealed satisfaction at her public humiliation. "Come with me." James appeared at her elbow, his voice gentle but urgent. "You don't want to be here for what happens next." Numbly, Elena allowed him to guide her through a side door into a quiet hallway. Only when they were alone did she find her voice again. "Did you know about this?" James shook his head, his expression grim. No one did, except apparently Gerald and Victoria. This was not Damien's plan. Then whose plan was it? Elena demanded, anger beginning to replace the initial shock. Because someone clearly orchestrated this whole charade. I'd say it was a joint effort between Victoria and Gerald. They'd been pushing for this alliance for years. James checked his phone, which was buzzing with messages. "Damien is looking for you. He's furious." "I can't see him right now." Elena felt tears threatening and blinked them back fiercely. I need to go home. At least let him explain." "Explain what?" "That his father announced his engagement to another woman. That he's been leading me on while planning to marry Victoria." Elena shook her head. "I don't need an explanation. I need to leave." James sighed but didn't argue further. "I'll have a car brought around. Will you wait here?" Elena nodded, wrapping her arms around herself as James stepped away to make the arrangements. She felt foolish, naive. How could she have believed that someone like Damien Lancaster would ever choose someone like her over Victoria Winters? It had been a fantasy, a modern fairy tale that had just crashed into reality. As she waited, Elena heard raised voices from the direction of the ballroom, Damien's among them. Part of her wanted to go back, to witness whatever confrontation was happening, but pride kept her in place. She had been humiliated enough for one evening. When James returned a few minutes later, his expression was both worried and somewhat odd. "The car is waiting at the side entrance, and for what it's worth, I've known Damien for 10 years and I've never seen him stand up to his father like he just did." "It doesn't matter," Elena said, though a tiny part of her wondered what had happened. "Thank you for your help, James." As she slipped into the waiting car, Elena felt a strange sense of déjà vu. Once again, she was leaving Damien Lancaster's world, returning to her own. Only this time the pain cut much deeper than mere embarrassment over a damaged car. This time, her heart was what had been broken. Damien stood in the center of his father's study, rage barely contained, as Gerald poured himself a whiskey, apparently unconcerned by the chaos he had just caused. "What the hell were you thinking?" Damien demanded. "Announcing an engagement that doesn't exist?" Gerald took a leisurely sip of his drink. "I was thinking of the future of this company. The Winters merger has been in discussion for months. Business mergers, not personal ones." Damien cut him off. "I have never given you or Victoria any reason to believe I would marry her. You've been escorting her to events, meeting with her father. As a business associate, nothing more. I've made my lack of interest clear from the beginning." Damien paced the room, too angry to stand still. "Do you have any idea what you've done tonight? The position you've put me in?" Gerald's expression hardened. "I know exactly what I've done. I've saved you from making a disastrous mistake with that waitress." "Her name is Elena," Damien said through clenched teeth. "And she's worth 10 of Victoria Winters. She's an employee, Damien. A charity case you picked up off the street. She's the most genuine, intelligent, compassionate person I've ever met," Damien shot back. "And thanks to your little stunt tonight, she probably never wants to see me again." Gerald set down his glass, studying his son with narrowed eyes. "You're in love with her?" It wasn't a question, but Damien answered anyway. "Yes, I am." "Love is a luxury we can't afford in our position." Gerald's voice carried the weight of his own compromises. "I learned that with your mother. She was a school teacher, brilliant, kind, utterly unsuited to this world. I loved her, but our marriage was a constant struggle between her idealism and the realities of business. So you'd have me marry a woman I don't love to avoid that struggle?" Damien shook his head in disgust. "I'm not you, father. I won't sacrifice my happiness for some corporate alliance. Even if it costs you the company?" Gerald's voice was cold now. "Charles Winters has made it clear he expects this marriage as part of our continued partnership. Without his investment, the expansion into Asia is dead in the water." Damien laughed bitterly. So that's what this is about. You're using my personal life as a bargaining chip. I'm securing the future of everything we've built. Gerald moved to his desk, pulling out a folder. The board will vote on the merger next week. Without the Winter's investment, we'll be vulnerable to the Edwards takeover bid. Then we'll find another investor, Damien said firmly, or restructure the expansion. But I will not marry Victoria Winters. You'd risk everything for this woman. Damien met his father's cold gaze with unwavering determination. For Elena, yes. And for myself. The two men stared at each other across the study, decades of unspoken tensions hanging in the air between them. Finally, Gerald sighed, suddenly looking older than his years. You're as stubborn as your mother, he said, and Damien couldn't tell if it was an accusation or a compliment. Go then, fix the mess I've made, but don't come crying to me when the board turns against you. Damien was already heading for the door. I'll handle the board and Charles Winters, but first, I need to find Elena. Elena sat on her couch in the dark, still wearing her evening gown, staring at nothing. She'd sent Mrs. Patel a message saying she wasn't feeling well and would pick up Mia in the morning. She couldn't face anyone right now, not even her sister. Her phone had been buzzing constantly. Messages from Damien, from James, even from colleagues who had witnessed the scene at the gala. She ignored them all, too numb to respond. How had she let herself believe, even for a moment, that she could fit into Damien's world, that there could be something real between them? She should have known better. A firm knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. Elena ignored it, not wanting to see anyone, but the knocking persisted, followed by a familiar voice. Elena, please, I know you're in there. Damien's voice was muffled by the door, but unmistakable. We need to talk. Go away, Damien, she called, not moving from the couch. There's nothing to talk about. There's everything to talk about. His voice grew more urgent. What happened tonight? It wasn't my doing. You have to believe that. Elena finally stood, anger propelling her to the door. She flung it open to find Damien standing there, his bow tie undone, his expression a mixture of desperation and determination. I don't have to believe anything, she said coldly, except what I saw with my own eyes. You saw my father making an announcement that I knew nothing about, Damien insisted, stepping forward. Elena, I would never do that to you. Never. She crossed her arms, keeping the door between them. Why would your father announce an engagement that doesn't exist? Because he and Charles Winters have been pushing for this merger for months, and they're using Victoria and me as leverage. Damien ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Elena had come to recognize as a sign of genuine distress. My father thought he could force my hand by making a public announcement. And what about Victoria? She didn't seem surprised. She wasn't. She was in on it from the beginning. Damien's expression darkened. She's been feeding my father information, manipulating both of us. Elena wanted to believe him. The pain and sincerity in his eyes seemed real, but the humiliation of standing in that ballroom while everyone watched her reaction to the announcement still stung. Even if that's true, it doesn't change anything, she said quietly. Tonight just proved what I've known all along. I don't belong in your world, Damien, I never will. That's not true. Damien moved closer, his voice softening. You belong wherever you choose to be, and I want you to choose to be with me. Elena felt her resolve wavering. What are you saying? I'm saying that I love you, Elena Carter. The words hung in the air between them, sincere and unadorned. I love your strength, your integrity, your devotion to Mia. I love how you've never once been impressed by my wealth or status. I love that you see the real me, not the CEO or the Lancaster heir. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. Damien, let me finish. He took her hands in his, and she didn't pull away. I don't care what my father thinks, or Victoria or the board or anyone else. I care about you, about us, about the future we could build together. It's not that simple, Elena protested, though she could feel her defenses crumbling. The announcement tonight will be publicly retracted tomorrow. I've already instructed our PR team to issue a statement clarifying that there is no engagement. Damien's thumbs traced circles on her palms. "I'm not going to lie to you, Elena. There will be consequences. My father is furious. Charles Winters will likely pull his investment, and the board will have questions. Your company will survive. I'll find other investors, restructure if necessary." His eyes held hers, unwavering. "What I can't do is lose you over my father's manipulation." Elena felt tears welling in her eyes. "I'm scared, Damien. Not just of your world, but of what I feel for you. It happened so fast and it's so intense." "I know." He pulled her gently closer. "I'm scared too. I've never felt this way about anyone. But I'm more afraid of letting you go than I am of facing whatever comes next together." Elena looked up at him, seeing the vulnerability behind his usual confidence. In that moment, he wasn't Damien Lancaster, powerful CEO, but simply a man asking for a chance at love. "What about work?" she asked, practical concerns surfacing through the emotion. "I can't continue at Lancaster Enterprises if we're involved. The conflict of interest. The foundation is governed by the board, not directly by me," Damien said. "But if it's a concern, we can establish clear reporting lines through the board president. Or," he added, "you could take your talent elsewhere. God knows any non-profit in the city would be lucky to have you." Elena shook her head, a small smile finally breaking through her tears. "You're really serious about this?" "Completely." Damien reached up to brush a tear from her cheek. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight, just a chance to prove that what we have is real and worth fighting for." Elena took a deep breath, considering all he'd said. The logical part of her mind warned of complications, of differences in their backgrounds and lifestyles that wouldn't simply disappear. But her heart had made its decision weeks ago. "I love you too," she said softly. "I've been fighting it because it seemed impossible, but I do." Relief and joy spread across Damien's face. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if afraid she might disappear. "That's all I need to know." When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, then deepening with all the emotion they'd both been restraining for months. Elena felt something settle inside her, a certainty that regardless of the challenges ahead, this was right. 1 year later, Elena adjusted the frames on her office wall, her MBA diploma next to a framed newspaper article highlighting the Lancaster Foundation's transformative work in educational access for underprivileged children. The view from her new office overlooked the community center that had been the Foundation's first major project under her leadership. "Looking good in here," came a familiar voice from the doorway. Elena turned to see Damien leaning against the frame, looking more relaxed than he ever had in the corporate offices. Though he still ran Lancaster Enterprises, the past year had changed him, softened some of his harder edges while strengthening his resolve to build a company that reflected his own values, not his father's. "Just adding some finishing touches," Elena said, moving to greet him with a quick kiss. "What do you think?" "I think the Elena Carter Foundation for Educational Opportunity couldn't have a better office or a better director." His pride in her was evident in every word. After the gala debacle, Elena had indeed left Lancaster Enterprises, but not because of scandal or defeat. Instead, with Damien's support and an initial grant from the Lancaster Foundation, she had established her own non-profit focused specifically on educational access, something she'd been passionate about since her own struggle to complete her education while caring for Mia. The transition hadn't been easy. Gerald Lancaster had fought his son's decision to fund Elena's foundation, and Victoria had done her best to spread rumors about Elena's gold-digging motivations. But Damien had stood firm, eventually buying out the Winters family's shares in Lancaster Enterprises through another investor. "How's Mia doing at the science program?" Damien asked, wandering around Elena's office, straightening a picture frame here, examining a report there. "Loving every minute of it," Elena smiled. "Her mentor says she has real potential in biomedical engineering. Can you believe that? My little sister, the future scientist." "I can absolutely believe it." Damien's phone buzzed and he checked it with a grimace. "That's James. The board meeting is in 30 minutes. You should go, don't want to keep them waiting." Elena straightened his already perfect tie, a gesture that had become a habit between them. They can wait 5 minutes. Damien pulled her close. Have you thought more about what we discussed last night? Elena felt a flutter of excitement at the mention. About moving in together? Yes. And I think we're ready. All three of us. The smile that broke across Damien's face was worth any lingering doubts she might have had. Really? You're sure Mia's okay with it? Are you kidding? She's already planning how to decorate her new room. I think she's more excited about the move than either of us. Damien laughed, the sound free and genuine in a way it hadn't been when they first met. I'll start the arrangements tonight. No, rush, Elena teased. We've managed this long with 2 separate places. Too long, Damien corrected her, his expression growing more serious. Elena, you know that this is just the first step. Eventually, I want... She pressed a finger to his lips. I know what you want, and you know I want it too. But one step at a time, remember? That was our agreement. Damien caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. One step at a time, he agreed. But I reserve the right to hope the next steps. Come quickly. As he left for his meeting, Elena turned back to her office window, watching the children playing in the community center's new playground. Her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined that day. Her bicycle crashed into Damien's car. There had been struggles along the way, cultural differences, social expectations, the sometimes painful adjustments as they built a relationship across worlds that often seemed incompatible. But the core of what had drawn them together remained unchanged. Their mutual respect, their shared values, and a love that had proven stronger than any obstacle. Elena smiled as her phone buzzed with a text from Damien, sent from his car just minutes after leaving. Forgot to tell you, checked on that scholarship program for Westside High. Board approved, full funding. We'll change lives together, one step at a time. Love you, always. That was what mattered in the end, Elena thought as she typed her reply. Not where they had started, but where they were going. Together. Marked forever by your love, she texted back, and wouldn't have it any other way. The end.